trickery on both ends.
Trickery on both ends. Yeah. The moment they come to an agreement, that very day, Laban's like, I'm going to go pull all the ones that I just agreed to give you.
Yeah, and hide a 3 days journey from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. It kind of shows the character of Laban from this. It says he used divination to find out that, Jacob was blessed and he needed to keep him around. And you see later on that Rachel steals this idol. I think it's in 31, and it's called a teraphim. And we've done a big breakdown with me and a couple of the other buddies of ours of what a teraphim actually is. And it's interesting. It's like a skull on a platter. And it's a lot more devious than you think, because to be a teraphim, it has to be a firstborn son of somebody else's, either your enemy or whatever. And they put it on this silver platter, which is very reminiscent of John the Baptist that we see later on, his head being put on this silver platter. But it's interesting because she steals that from him so that he can't use his divination to track them down later.
Now, weren't they shrunken heads also?
It's the assumption, and I see this in the occult, is they use a pentagram with Hebrew letters written around the outside of it, and it has the skull in the center of it. So I don't necessarily know if it's a shrunken head or if it's just, a skull, but it's that same concept. And they use that for this divination to, communicate with counsel, or I don't necessarily think it's demonic. I think it would be more of a higher up being rather than just, everyday Nephilim spirits.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of Native American tribes that also have legends of shrunken heads and how they would use them for different reasons. And I don't think anything to do with Torah. I think it was more of the passed down traditions. So,
absolutely,
of this type of stuff. But it's interesting. Laban definitely. I'm not sure he's eager to do Torah. I don't get that feeling. What do you guys think?
No, I don't think so either.
It's weird. It's weird because, like I said, the custom that he mentions earlier about having to give away the elder daughter first, that's in the Torah. So it seems like he's picking and choosing what he wants to, abide by, and then mix in his own, cultural pagan traditions, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. From, I don't have a daughter, but I can only imagine being in a situation where you got two daughters, one of them smoking hot and the other one may be attractive, but for whatever reason, the guys aren't going for, and so you're like, man, I'm never going to marry her off. She's going to be at the house forever, and I need, and I'm not even thinking of a financial obligation, just simply if he wants grandchildren or, if he wants to grow the family, he's thinking, man, this may never happen with Leah. So I'm going to finagle this law and make sure that I give her away, So I don't, just my thoughts, just a speculation, but it is interesting. He definitely is picking and choosing because, like, to me, this was egregious. The moment they agree, all right, you take the speckled and spotted, I'll take all the pure. He's like, okay, so now give me all my speckled and spotted from your possession. You can't even have them in your mix now. I'm going to put them with my sons, completely separate from you. Yeah. So this is, What do you guys think about Jacob's? I'll put this back on screen real quick. What do you guys think about Jacob's plan, if you will, right? As he's trying to breed the stronger ones. And then I've never heard of this. I don't know animal husbandry. I've never raised livestock, sheep or goats. I don't know if there's some specific way when they mate, if you do certain things when they mate, it results in different types of offspring. What do you guys think?
From what go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, buddy. Go ahead.
I was just say because I tried to dig into this passage because to me, it almost seemed like a miraculous instance. There's something that he understood that we don't have any understanding of, because there was the debate was forever long when it talked about what was actually happening with this. And I think it goes a little bit deeper when you read into it versus what the English says. But, there is this kind of idea that whatever he was doing, he knew that there were certain he was breeding the strongest surviving, he knew that they would replicate and that there may have been some kind of thing where he was building something that, during breeding season, the males, if they could jump over it to get to where these females were, put it in front of them, then they would, regardless of that, they would jump over and get to it or whatever. So it's interesting, but it's nothing that in modern times anybody has been able to like replicate. So there's something going on there that he had knowledge of that we don't understand right now.
Well, yeah, if I recall, Sean, you had mentioned a while ago, I can't remember which broadcast it was on, but when Jacob is taking these fresh branches of poplar, almond, plane trees, and he's peeling the bark back, and he's exposing this white, whatever milkiness, whatever it is, inside of the inner wood, and then putting it in the water. That's somehow it's creating something. I mean, he knew that doing that would result in what we see later on down, right? So it's interesting because in the pre-flood world, the angels were teaching men how to use like herbs and different mixing roots and mixing roots and stuff like that. So I just wonder if this is kind of, as you had mentioned in a previous broadcast, if this is what he's doing, if he had knowledge of these roots and had the ability to do this, and
inside the roots of plants and trees is the 5 different growth hormones. And I'm trying to remember all of them right now, but it's auxins, cytokinins, gibberellins, abscisic acid, and ethylene, I think. And so those determine, those are those are literal growth hormones that can affect biological entities as well as trees and plants and shrubs. And so this is where we literally had the U.S. military in the 1960s figured out that gibberellins was an effective growth hormone. They started experimenting with it, and then the company, I don't remember the name of the company, but was it DuPont maybe, they started using gibberellins with the product on the shelf, Miracle Grow. Like that was the main ingredient of Miracle Grow, was gibberellins, and it's just the roots. It's just this hormone that you can extract from plants and trees roots. And so that could be what he was doing, right? He just opened up the inner core of this particular type of branch. It could have been a root branch.
Yeah.
And
he knew to put it in water, right? And then that, if they came over to drink it, it would somehow affect their offspring, I guess.
Yeah. So that, I just want to let everyone know that's listening what Ken has mentioned. Yeah, I did mention that in the past, and that was speculation. So just researching from what was this idea of cutting roots and why did it birth giants, and the Watchers were teaching mankind how to do that. Like, what does that mean? So yeah,
and obviously they didn't birth giants or giant goats or lambs or anything like that. Right. He knew that somehow it would affect it would create speckles or different colorations. Therefore, he could take that and own those things. And
that's where it goes way beyond my actual knowledge of chemistry and biology, because I have no clue how, even if that process of adding growth hormones into the water for them, how that equals now it being a speckled and spotted ram or goat. I don't know how that works. So that's why it's just speculation. Yeah.
It's interesting. Whatever he was doing, he had intent and it worked. So he had to know something was going on there. He was inspired, whether it be just from experience from doing this before, or whether it was, God's blessing on him. Whatever he was doing, it worked. So throughout this 6 years, he is now increasing greatly with his money. So the first 14 years, he increased by getting 2 wives and several children, which is a blessing in itself. But now the father is ensuring that he's going to actually have his own finances secured as well. So just for those reading along at home, I'll just go through some of the summary real quick for everybody. This is in Genesis 30. We see Rachel struggle to conceive and offer Jacob her maidservant Bilhah to act as a surrogate. Bilhah conceived and gave birth twice to Dan and later Naphtali. Leah stopped conceiving and offered Jacob her maidservant Zilpah to act as a surrogate. Zilpah conceived and gave birth to Gad and later Asher. Later, Leah gave birth again 3 times. She birthed 2 boys, Issachar and Zebulun, and a daughter, Dinah. Later, Rachel conceived and gave birth to Joseph. So after Joseph was born and the 14 years were accomplished, Jacob asked Laban to receive his payment so he could take his family and go back to live with Isaac and Rebekah. Now, this was interesting to me, guys, because this is where it says the Lord told him to do this. Mm-hmm. It's at this point in the text, it said, the Lord said, go back to your family. So this is where I would say, just like we've been talking about in previous weeks, what's going on here? It didn't say it was a dream or a vision. It just says the word Lord came to him and said, hey, do this. So is that just an angel showing up?
Yeah, I would say. Yeah. That's what I think. Yeah, for sure. I find funny this mandrake exchange. Ruben's out pulling these things. And I don't know if you guys have seen what mandrakes look like. They don't look amazing. They look kind of like like weird, rooty looking carrots almost. But Rachel wanted some, right? And so she was willing to, I guess, give Leah's husband as well. I mean, it's both their husband, but I guess he tended to stay over at Rachel's house a little more than Leah's. So they make this exchange. If you give me some of your son's mandrakes, you can have Jacob and sleep with him. Yeah. I just find it funny. It's almost reminiscent of this show my wife and I. It's kind of like a guilty pleasure that we like to watch. It's Sister Wives, and there's always a favorite, you know what I mean? There's always a favorite wife. He's always over at the one wife's house more than the others, and it creates these issues as it would. And so I just kind of picture this going on, that Jacob likes to stay over at Rachel's a little more than Leah's.
My question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say my question with this when relating to Torah and commandments. Do you guys think that addendum was made to the Torah about, you shouldn't sleep with your mother, you shouldn't sleep with your sisters, that kind of stuff, and then you shouldn't marry two sisters? Do you think that addendum was added because of this very situation where he was an example? He was, a patriarchal father who was an example of not loving both of his wives the way he should have? Or do you think that because I mean, we always look at, should anybody or our patriarchs or anything like that, would God command somebody to violate Torah? Are we looking at something that has come after this, and that's why it's added to it, or were they in violation of something they didn't even understand yet because it hadn't even been spoken to man yet?
Ken, what do you think?
Good question. I think that the instruction was there before this happened. I think it probably was made known or highlighted, I guess you could say, later at Sinai, just to, show like this is something that you should not do. And you can use what you said there, Aaron, as a example of, Jacob, right, having an issue with having both sisters as his wives, and the tension that created. But I think it probably stemmed further back as a commandment. I know that we see in Jubilees, like Reuben, when he sleeps with his, I guess stepmother, I guess she would be, that was a huge no-no, and he actually suffered quite a bit for that. We read that in the Testament of Reuben, even just, how much of an issue that was, and it warranted death, really. But it's almost like Yahweh's,
death before sundown that day.
Yeah. So,
and the angel tells him, like, the reason why we didn't kill Reuben was because that we didn't reveal this instruction yet to mankind.
Yeah.
Because otherwise there would be no tribe of Reuben.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
It's in Jubilees 33. I think it's 33. The angel has to tell Moses that. Yeah.
But what do you think, Sean?
No, I agree with you. I think the command was already there. I just think Laban doesn't follow Torah.
Yeah, because he tricked him through and through. I mean,
he tricked him. So if this was supposed to be a Torah thing, and Jacob was ignorant of the instruction about the eldest daughter is supposed to be given first, then Jake and Laban was actually following Torah, then Jacob would just been stuck with Leah. No offense to Leah, right? But he would just had one wife. But I don't think Laban's following Torah anyway. So he was like, fine. I just looking at it like a financial gain. All right, work for me another 7 years. Okay, cool. You can have Rachel too. Like, even though all that is nonsense, according to, so I agree. Even though it doesn't explicitly say when this particular command was, how far back the patriarchs knew about it, I think Laban would be following it anyway, personally. So, because Laban's just looking at how can I get free labor, apparently. This dude is just...
He didn't to stay there a month before he was trying to put him to work.
Yeah, he is. He's crazy, man. He's just like, yeah, I got family coming in. I got some free labor coming in. It's funny. It's weird because you think that I'm making this up to be funny, but I actually know a family member like that. And it's become a point of extreme contention between multiple family members because of that type of behavior, where they offer to help somebody who's staying with them, and then they start putting them to work. It's weird. It's a weird feeling. So this is a real trait. This is a real thing, if I could say that. And that person, by the way, is a business owner, and they started having this family member come and help them with their business. So it's kind of an odd thing to see that this is apparently a trait that people have been tempted to do for a long time, all throughout time. So real quick, guys, we'll finish out this summary for those listening at home, and then we'll jump into 31. So I think it's interesting that after Joseph was born, we have basically Yahweh through the angel. He's telling Jacob, hey, it's time to go back to Isaac and Rebekah. But then Laban convinces him to stay and work another 6 years. So I think that's interesting because he does. And as a result of this 6 years, Jacob increases in his livestock as a part of his payment. Laban agreed, and throughout the next 6 years, Laban connived to diminish Jacob's earnings, while Yahweh greatly increased Jacob's livestock through a mating strategy. So to me, this was just an extremely encouraging part of the passage, where Jacob is trying to do what's right at this point. He's got his family to take care of, and he's trying to increase his possessions for his family. Laban's looking at this like, how can I basically abuse and squeeze to my advantage out of this situation when I can? So even though Laban is trying to stop Jacob from being prosperous, Yahweh is just increasing him all the more. And to me, that's super encouraging, because I've had bad employers that have tried to change my schedule to where I didn't get the best sales days, or they tried to put me at a branch that didn't have as much traffic, or that I've been in those situations, and I knew it was obvious. Even though my numbers were better than other people were shown positions of favor ahead of me that didn't deserve it according to their numbers, right? So I've been in this type of situation where I felt like I was getting the thumb pushed down on, even though I was doing really well, And so anyway, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah. Sorry.
Awesome.
Seems about right.
Awesome.
The only other thing that I see in this, because I did a presentation a couple years back on genetics and Genesis, and the genetic diversity in this family line. When you actually look at it, I mean, when you look at Esau, he was named Esau because he was red and hairy. So, when we look at like modern Jews today, we see them as dark haired, dark skinned. And there's a whole thing with the incursion of, there was an ongoing, thing of Islam attacking, not only Spain, but the Middle East in general. And that can change the color types of people. But whatever Jacob was, he was, I mean, generally, I think his name even meant like, it was like perfect, or he looked like he was like the ideal looking person of the people around him. So, and then he comes from a family lineage that very similar, because he's now marrying his cousins or what have you. But the two maidservants, we don't really have any genetic, we don't have any lineage for them.
Right.
But we do understand somewhat is that, like the tribe of Dan, from some people who have looked into, followed this lineage, that they may have moved up and been a part of, like went up the Danube River, went over to, the areas of the UK, and then up into Scandinavia, that this judgment of God, these people that became pagan, may have become the Viking tribes later on. So that they genetically look different, because that's what look, the blonde hair, blue eyed thing comes from this tribe of Dan. When you look at the Goths, they became the Gats, which became the Visigoths, and they are also a predominantly blonde hair, blue eyed, or light skinned people that later became the Scythians. And even when you look at Iran meant the kingdom of the Aryans. So these were predominantly different looking people in the northern kingdoms than what Judah and Benjamin looked like. And this all comes from these 12 tribes and their 4 different mothers. So you could literally, from those 4 different mothers, have an entirely different looking groups coming out of this. And we also saw this, with Noah's 3 sons and their 3 wives. They could have been entirely different looking. And this is where we get the genetic differences we have from, all of the peoples of the world come from these dispersions of these families.
They
must have been drinking from the same troughs as the goats or something.
Right. He was eating the tree roots.
Yeah, Aaron, I was doing some research a while back on Ethiopia, and there was a remnant of Levites that had went down to Ethiopia and flourished around the 5th century BC. And I ran across some other explorers that had went down, I think it was in the 1800s, and they went down to parts of Ethiopia, and I think it's Eritrea is the connected country right next to them. And they were speaking with some of the Levites down there, and they ran into another group of Israelites down there that they claimed to be Danites. And so I thought that was fascinating, and I just never heard that before. Yeah. And they said that they had records tracing all the way back to like the 13th century of a small family of Danites that went down and lived around the Levites in Ethiopia. So in addition to what you just said, these people are just going everywhere. Like when the dispersion happened with the Assyrian kings and then Babylon taking over 100 years later, like these people got dispersed everywhere. It's crazy, right? Where do they flourish and become predominantly known? That's where history usually records them. But I think it's fascinating. Yeah. I think when Yeshua returns, we're going to have this incredible library that's been recorded by the angels of where all his scattered people went, it's going to be beautiful to walk through it and see, oh my goodness, these people went over to Mongolia. These people went over to Britannica, right? Yeah, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah. And you know, it's beautiful because, you know, people take that kind of information and they try to say one people group or another is, you know, is more, you know, like you saw this with the whole Aryan ideology from, you know, the bad people from Germany, you know, and then you also see this with the out of Africa ideology. It's like one or the other, but we all come from literally the same lineage. And this was the promise given to Abraham, that your people will be like the sands of the sea, and they'll be, you know, scattered amongst, and blessings amongst the nations. And that was the truth. That's what happened. They didn't just hang around in the Middle East. They went everywhere.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Whoa, guys, we got something fascinating here in the chat. Hannibal is saying his parents are from Eritrea in Ethiopia. I didn't even know this, Hannibal.
That's awesome.
He says he's going to start reading Enoch with his dad, who can read Amharic and Giaz. Bro, we got to get together.
Cool.
Oh, yeah, that's the big deal. Look, hey, Hannibal, I know you just started watching the channel like maybe less than a year ago, but 2.5 years ago, I told people that I wanted to find someone that could read Giaz in First Enoch, because I wanted to compare it with R.H. Charles's translation from the 1800s. So, bro, let's get together. Let's talk. This is crazy. This is crazy. If your dad can actually read Giaz, and we can go over the original Enoch and Giaz, that's huge. That is huge. I got questions. Let's get together, bro.
That's amazing. What a connection.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that your parents were because he lives in Sweden, so I had no idea. So, you know, there we are, right? It's just everyone's spread out.
Yeah.
Awesome. One last thing about this chapter, I just want to mention that in case anyone's read, I think it's a testament of Joseph in the Testament of 12 Patriarchs, that it mentions this thing with the mandrakes, and it says that it's either Asher or Joseph, but it mentions that Rachel took these mandrakes and presented them as a first fruits offering to the Lord.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
and it was her effort to do that in order to like conceive. And so that's why then she says, God blesses me. So that's pretty fascinating.
She brought it to the priest or whatever in the land. Yeah.